a student intern of Senator Ortiz-Pino. Behind me to my left is Adrian Vuelta Maya, who's a student from the University of New Mexico, who's here to assist Senator Ortiz-Pino.
And actually, Mr. Chair, I have a student intern that's here as well, Alexis Pierce, who is a junior at UNM and is majoring in political science and English. Perfect. And she'll be with us all week.
Welcome. We're next going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the confirmation of the Honorable Barbara Vigil to the appointment of the Secretary as the Secretary of Children, Youth, and Families Department. And I'm going to defer to Senator Ortiz-Pino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee. Thank you so much for hearing the confirmation of a secretary nominated by the governor for what's probably one of the most difficult, most challenging. I mean, a lot of our departments are challenging, in all honesty, but this one has such a significant role in our state and on the future of our state and the children that are in the department's custody, the children that are, somehow involved in both the juvenile justice and in these protective services and in the adoption programs of the state, the domestic violence programs, the sexual assault programs. All of those are part of her responsibility. And her background is one that I think makes her particularly well suited to tackle this. Although why she would want to do that is perhaps the question that we would want to start with, because it's been a very difficult assignment over the years for the various secretaries that we've had. Former Justice Vigil was, of course, most recently on the Supreme Court. She was before that. You were on the appeals court for a while. Were you?
On the district court. Yes.
And it was when she was on the district court that I remember her testimony many times about how difficult it was to make decisions about the lives of children coming before her as a district court judge dealing with family issues. And I was touched by her keen interest in seeing CYFD improved. So when she was willing to step forward, I think a lot of us were saying, wow, what a great opportunity this gives us. Her background is such that, you have her resume before you. You see that she graduated from St. Catherine's School here in Santa Fe. Then she went to New Mexico State and got her degree in accounting, but then went to UNM Law School. And that background, her lifelong experience here in New Mexico, her commitment to children and families, I think make her an excellent choice. And I want to thank the governor for persuading her to tackle this responsibility. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to the nominee, the secretary-designate, Barbara Vigil.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for considering my nomination as Cabinet Secretary of Children, Youth, and Families Department. It is an honor to be nominated to serve in this role. If I may, I'd like to begin by thanking my sponsor, Senator Jerry Ortiz-Pino. He has been a champion for families and children in need and vulnerable communities, and I am honored that he has agreed to sponsor me for confirmation. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I appreciate the opportunity to share briefly a few words about myself. And I will briefly touch on my education, my background, my professional experience, but more importantly, on my core philosophy in support of my nomination. I was born in New Mexico, born at St. Joseph's Hospital in Albuquerque, and I was raised in Santa Fe. I have been a lawyer for 37 years and served as a district court judge in the 1st Judicial District for 12 years, where I served as a children's court judge for 10 of those 12 years. The last 2 years, I presided over the civil docket, and at that time, I served as chief judge of the First Judicial District. After my term as a children's court judge and a district court judge in the first, I decided to run for the New Mexico Supreme Court, and I was fortunate to be elected in 2012. On the highest court of New Mexico, I served as Associate Justice, as Chief Justice, and as Senior Justice on the court. I recently retired from the New Mexico Supreme Court, not because I wanted to no longer work in the field of child welfare or justice for all, but simply because I desired to pivot my professional career to a position that I could be more of an advocate for families. After graduating from St. Catherine's Indian School here in Santa Fe, I attended New Mexico State University and attained a bachelor's degree in accounting. From there, I went on to the University of New Mexico School of Law, where I obtained my Juris Doctorate degree. As a lawyer, I've worked in the private sector, in the public sector, and before becoming a children's court judge here in Santa Fe. As a lawyer, a judge, and a justice, my passion has been finding ways in which to improve the juvenile justice system and the child welfare system, the entire administration of justice for New Mexicans. One example of this was I was fortunate to work closely with a group of dedicated professionals in developing and implementing a continuum of care model to serve the needs of vulnerable youth based upon sustained collaboration between education, law enforcement, the courts, interfaith communities, and treatment providers. That system, known as the Juvenile Continuum Grant Fund, is still in effect and continues to serve youth across our state. I am also proud of the fact that as a judge, I work closely with tribal communities on the Tribal State Judicial Consortium to remove barriers between our respective court systems. So let me turn to my core philosophy. My core philosophy in leading the department, my leadership will be based on 3 core principles. Transparency. It is important that the department share information about its operations in order to enhance and monitor our services and operations while also adhering to our legal obligation of confidentiality and helping to develop trust in our system. Second, collaboration and inclusion. It is my intention to improve collaboration and inclusion in the work of children, youth, and families in order to enable us to improve the lives of those vulnerable families. And we must improve a system of care to those who are in crisis. This is hard work, and to be successful, the department cannot do it alone. We must work collaboratively, not only with our sister agencies, but other local governments, with school districts, and our tribal partners. We must do so in order to attain success. And finally, members of the committee, accountability. The department must be accountable, not only to the people we serve, but also to the public and the work that we do. We will continually improve our data and reporting systems in order to measure our success and examine where improvement must be made. While it goes without saying that there is always need for improvement, our ultimate goal, my ultimate goal, is to achieve better outcomes for children and families. It is my commitment to ensure that if a child and family come into contact with CYFD, that their lives must be better off for having had such contact. And lastly, if I may, in the few months I have served in this role, I have been impressed by the commitment and hard work of the nearly 2,000 employees at CYFD as they address the needs of children and families in crisis. While I understand that there are and will always be ways to do things better, we should remember that there are many untold stories, unsung heroes who serve in those families in crisis day in and day out across our state. And so in closing, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, I would like to share the words of the late Honorable Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Real change, enduring change, happens one step at a time. Mr. Chair and members of the committee, I would be honored if you would enable me to take the next step. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. I'm going to go to public comment. Is there anybody in the room who wants to speak on behalf of the Honorable Barbara Vigil? Seeing no hands, there's several people online who would like to speak briefly on your behalf. And I'm going to start off with the Honorable Edward Chavez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I appreciate the opportunity to speak here on behalf of my dear friend and former colleague on the Supreme Court, Barbara Vigil, in favor of her confirmation as Secretary of CYFD. I think it's an important day for the children, youth, and family in New Mexico who are going to come under the jurisdiction of CYFD, because I know that it's an honor for me to be here to confirm for you that Barbara's the real deal. I was not surprised that she actually agreed to serve as Secretary of CYFD, but alarmed because, I mean, she is supposed to be retired. But I also know about her commitment to the people of New Mexico. You learn a lot about a person when you work with them for several years trying to decide laws, develop processes, and deal not with theoretical cases, but with cases that affect real people in the state of New Mexico. And what she had told you about data and things of that nature, I can assure you that she knows that it's not data and processes that we are talking about. It's people who are affected by the process. And I think that what you have is an individual here who is not only compassionate, hardworking, but she loves and cares deeply about the people in our multicultural, multilingual state. I can tell you that her leadership skills are impeccable. What she has that I always think about somebody's compass qualities when I think about how they will serve the state of New Mexico. And her greatest compass quality, in addition, I guess, to trustworthiness, is she's an active listener. I saw her on the court as she led the entire judiciary for a couple of years as Chief Justice. And her active listening invited input from outside sources, from all the judges and chief judges throughout the state of New Mexico. And there was never a disagreement. She's objective, open-minded, and she's able to reach and bring people to a consensus. I know that sometimes New Mexico fails because we are unwilling to look at what other states have done successfully. It didn't surprise me to read in the paper that she's actually looking at what other states are doing and how she might be able to improve CYFD. It's that open mind and her unyielding commitment to process that I think is going to make her a terrific Secretary of CYFD. I am honored to be here to speak in favor of her confirmation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Next, I'm going to go to the Honorable Celia Floyd Castillo.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the Rules Committee. It is an honor to be here today to speak in favor of Justice Barbara Vigil's confirmation as Secretary of the Children, Youth, and Families Department. Justice Hill and I met over 20 years ago when she was running for district judge for the 1st Judicial District, and I was running for the New Mexico Court of Appeals. As district judge, Justice Hill was a hard worker. She handled thousands of cases during her time on the bench. But she also saw flaws in the system and addressed them. Additionally, she helped establish a juvenile justice board, or boards, which made sure at-risk youth were served. We worked together on a number of issues affecting the judiciary, and I was always impressed with Justice Hill's compassion, kindness, thoughtfulness, insights, and problem-solving ability. 10 years ago, she became justice on the New Mexico Supreme Court and served as its chief. The Supreme Court, as you know, is also the administrative arm of the judiciary. And there, Justice Hill continued her tireless work for the vulnerable, especially New Mexico's children. She addressed systemic changes that needed to happen. As chief, she led the court in a collegial manner and led the entire judiciary with her vision that the courts serve the public in a fair and equitable manner. She was and is committed to excellence. When Justice Hill retired, she did not have a retirement party. Rather, she had a gratitude gathering. And this sums her up. She never wants to celebrate herself. Instead, she is always aware of what others give, and she thanks them for all they do. I also know Justice Hill on a personal level. We've traveled together to a variety of places, and we have a special love of Spain. What I appreciate most about Justice Hill is her kindness, integrity, and what I call grace and grit. She leads with a calmness, knowing that there will be challenges and that the challenges can be overcome. She is the perfect choice for Secretary of Children, Youth, and Families Department. I ask that you confirm her nomination.
Thank you so much. I'm going to head on over to Early Childhood Secretary Elizabeth Roginski.
Hi, good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Rules Committee. I am here to stand in very strong support of the Honorable Barbara V. Hill to be Secretary of Children, Youth, and Families Department. I have not had the pleasure to know her as long as so many, but in this very short time of getting to know Justice V. Hill, she has demonstrated all the things that you've just heard. And as the department that really counts on that strong partnership with the Children, Youth, and Families Department, I could not be more thrilled with her openness, her commitment to collaboration, the issues she talked about with transparency and accountability. And I just am here to stand in such strong support of her and have welcomed her ideas and her approach and the way we're thinking about families and children at the center and bringing all of our agencies and our local partners and our tribal partners to be active in providing the types of supports and services that our families need, that our children need, and that the people who work in child welfare need. So her leadership is going to be greatly enjoyed and has already been, and I just stand in strong support and recommend the committee to approve her as Secretary for CYFD.
Thank you. And I'm going to go to Cabinet Secretary Dr. David Grace.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Appreciate you allowing us to attend by video today. It's just an incredible privilege for me to speak on behalf of Barbara Viel, and even further, two of the people I admire most in this world, Justices Chavez and Viel, are both on this call today. I speak on behalf of the other health secretaries, of course, HSD, DOH, but also Aging, and my strong endorsement for acting or Secretary Designee VL. I've worked closely with her for the past 4 months since she started her job. I also worked very, very closely with her for 2 months prior to that. Before she even started her job, it sure seemed to me like she was working full time to try to advance the cause of children in New Mexico. I think she's just exactly what CYFD needs and what our state needs right now in terms of leadership for the department, her warmth, her ability to listen, her ability to lead by example. I feel inspired myself to keep plugging away at my job when I spend time with her and meet with her. You probably are aware that HSD and CYFD are working very closely together on a settlement agreement for the Kevin S. litigation. And that settlement agreement really requires dramatic and revolutionary, if you will, changes in CYFD and HSD as well to ensure that children in custody get absolutely the best possible care, treatment, and services. And she's just been an absolute delight to work with for me. She is calm. She's a tough negotiator. She has kept us within the confines of the settlement agreement on many occasions, which is greatly appreciated. And so for me, having her as our CYFD secretary is just exactly what we need. It's a dream come true for me and the other health secretaries, and strongly encourage you all to support her nomination today for the permanent role of Secretary of Children, Youth, and Families Department. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the committee.
Thank you. Mariana Padilla.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm Mariana Padilla. I'm the Director of the Children's Cabinet in the Office of Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham. Thank you for allowing me to speak this morning in support of Barbara V. Hill's confirmation. Secretary V. Hill's qualifications for the position are undisputed. She's had a long and respected career as an attorney and judge, and as you heard her describe herself, this includes serving as Chief Justice of the New Mexico Supreme Court. Beginning in 2019, I had the honor of serving with Secretary V. Hill on the Children's Court Improvement Commission, where she led and has led for many, many years critical efforts to improving the child welfare system. I commend and sincerely thank Barbara for her continued service to our state, especially our children. I served as interim cabinet secretary for CYFD prior to Barbara V. Hill taking on the role, and I continue to work very closely with her. Barbara V. Hill is an incredibly strong leader, as you've heard others speak to. She's a knowledgeable advocate. She is compassionate and caring with all whom she interacts, and she is trusted and respected by her colleagues and those that she serves. Secretary V. Hill has a clear vision for the department and has a commitment to transparency and honesty as she tackles the needs and challenges of this agency. I cannot think of a better person to take on this role, and I fully and enthusiastically support Barbara V. Hill as Secretary of the Children, Youth, and Families Department. Thank you.
Thank you. And last on the list is Marianne Shaning.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members of the Rules Committee. And like others, thank you for allowing me to speak today in support of this appointment. My name is Marianne Shaning, and I have a small consulting firm in Santa Fe working with state agencies and the courts, primarily in areas dealing with children and families. I have known the Secretary Designate for over 2 decades, both professionally and personally. On a professional level, we have worked over that time period on a number of system change initiatives, all designed to improve outcomes for children and families. In that work, Barbara is the perfect partner, because she not only believes in system change, she is very skilled at pulling it off. We like to say she gets it and she gets it done. Anyway, I don't want to spend any more time on the professional connection. I just want to tell you a little bit about Barbara personally. She and I, years ago, have had a friendship with a woman named Mary Lou Cook. Some of you might remember Mary Lou Cook because she used to lobby the legislature to create a Department of Peace for the state of New Mexico. Anyway, for years, Barbara and I and two others would meet with MLC and talk about the importance of such things as kindness, respect, gratitude, many of the qualities that you all have spoken to today. In fact, Barbara and MLC started working on a children's book to incorporate those themes for children. But Mary Lou Cook passed at the age of 95 about 10 years ago. And to this day, the four of us who surrounded her all those years continue to meet, continue to talk about MLC, to talk about those lessons. And out of all of that, I can say that I can attest very, very clearly to Barbara's generosity of spirit. It's amazing. I can also say that she probably got the best marks from MLC in all of those lessons. MLC would be very proud of her today. So in closing, I too just want to lend my encouragement to the committee to confirm Barbara. She's a wonderful human being and an incredible leader. Thank you.
Thank you. And actually, there's one more on Zoom.
Oh my goodness.
Juliana Koob, and then we have one in the audience.
Mr. Chairman, members of committee, Juliana Koob. I am a registered lobbyist, but I'm here speaking as an individual. I felt compelled to speak today because the Secretary Vigil, former Justice Vigil, is just so special that I wanted to speak out as a social worker. I have my undergraduate degree and graduate degrees in social work. And the greatest skill that we know we can use as social workers is to listen, and to listen actively, listen generously, and listen thoughtfully. And for those reasons, I strongly support Barbara Vigil in this position. She is an active, compassionate, and generous listener, which is desperately needed in our department and desperately needed with the families that we're working with in the state of New Mexico. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you so much. And then one last comment from the audience before I head to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Grace. Thank you. Oh, you got to hold it. Okay. My name is Grace Phillips. I'm General Counsel for New Mexico Counties, and I'm really delighted to be able to speak in support of this nomination. I've known the Secretary-designate since she was a children's court judge in Santa Fe District Court, and then we really began working together more when she was on the Supreme Court as a justice and then as a Chief Justice working on juvenile detention alternatives and reform, and her knowledge of youth, her commitment to youth, and the issues around what isn't working well and what is working well in the state, I think, is tremendous. And other people have mentioned it, but her gentle demeanor, her kindness, her openness to people, and her very firm commitment to results, I think, are the qualities that will make her a fantastic secretary. And so I, too, urge you to support the nomination.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
And now I'm going to members of the committee. Senator Duhigg.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator, and thank you, Justice. I think you're taking on one of the hardest jobs in our state, and I can't tell you how grateful I am, and everyone else seems to be, that you are willing to do so. So I just wanted to express my thanks and wish you luck in what is a massive job that is desperately needed. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Lopez.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and Justice, Madam Secretary. All the accolades that have been given to you this morning are right on point. Mr. Chairman, I have worked with Justice Vigil for a few years as we talk about and have worked on the Children's Court Improvement Commission over the years about improving systems for CYFD. I know during her time on the bench here in Santa Fe, she was looked at as being fair, looking at the best interests of the family, but primarily, of course, focusing on the child or children that were in front of her court. And I know that what you have come into with CYFD, at least you have the familiarity and you know a lot about the systems within the CYFD family, as I call it. But you also understand the intricacies of how it works with regards to guardian ad litems, which we're working on. Giving it a plug, Mr. Chairman. But also all of the other issues that also surround the judiciary and how we look as to for those judges that oversee many times when these children and families come in front of them. So I know that you're aware of that, and that's part of the other system that's linked to CYFD. But I know at least you're not coming in with, how do I say, that your eyes are not open. You have a very good perspective as to where some changes need to happen. And I know that here in the legislature, you have those of us who are very willing to help support in any way that we can. I know with the Kevin S. settlement, I know that there was some bewilderment that we couldn't institute some of that change into statute. But I'm hoping that there's some changes that can come as you progress in your tenure within CYFD, that we can actually make that permanent. Some of those negotiations, and I understand how the process was going, but I look forward to seeing what else we can do to make sure and make permanent where we are taking care of our children and offering support to our families. I know that what we have a tendency to do is, I mean, there are some atrocious, awful end results that we've dealt with, but there are other families that need some help. Not everybody is a perfect parent, and I'm one to say mine haven't come with a book of instructions or anything, so a lot of times it's even hard for us who have a little bit more than others to figure out how you deal with children and how to raise them. And so I know that CYFD, Mr. Chairman, is not just the department itself, but it's also linked with our public school system, with our healthcare system, in which Dr. Scrace, I was very appreciative of him being here, because he too is very integral when we talk about Medicaid and what we can do to support our families. But it's also with social work, because as you know, it's the system. So you have a, how should I say, a heavy load in which you are carrying, but I know that you understand and you've been there and you've done the work. So, Mr. Chairman, I just want to say that we're here to help and work with you too. And thank you, Senator Ortiz-Pino, for bringing her forward today too. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Worth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, now Secretary, soon to be Secretary, Vigil. I have known Judge Vigil, Justice Vigil, now Secretary Vigil, really since you first came on the district bench, both in my capacity as a lawyer and as a legislator. And I certainly would second and third all the things that have been said about the way you exercise leadership, and you just see that whether it's in an individual situation or in a more collaborative situation. So I do, Senator Ortiz-Pino, you mentioned this is an excellent pick by the governor. I just want to second that for sure, and really state that it's an indication that our governor understands the importance of this agency, because I just don't think that has always been there during my time in the legislature. And having an understanding of what this agency does and making sure that the person who's appointed to lead it is able to find that incredible balance. And I've got a question about that balance. I just think it's something that clearly Governor Lujan Grisham gets, and with this appointment, it's kind of a continuation of what I think are big changes that need to happen in the way things have been done in the past. One of the things that you mentioned, and I really appreciated your three kind of principles: transparency, collaboration, accountability. I have a question though about the tension that exists between transparency and of course the confidentiality that exists. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senator Worth, for that question. That is indeed the question I get asked the most, either by individuals, stakeholders, the media. And I think the goal is really to be accountable and transparent with respect to systems. How do we operate, and how are we checking ourselves to ensure that we are doing the best job we possibly can? And if we are not, then what are we doing about changing? So when I say transparency and accountability, it's really about a large systemic openness to the public. They deserve to know, how is this agency being run, and how do we establish or provide answers to those questions. With respect to confidentiality, I think it's a fine line to ensure that when a situation occurs, that we don't disclose the victim's identity because it's not their fault for having been a victim, and that we protect them from their identity from disclosure as we examine that case may reflect something that needs to be addressed. So that's what I mean about the balance between openness, transparency, accountability, as well as maintaining the confidentiality of individual families and victims who we are serving.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I appreciate that, because it does, again, I've not practiced in children's law area, but it feels like that's one of as the lights all get shined on this agency and things happen, and it's how we kind of navigate through that balance. So another question, Mr. Chair, I know that there's been lots of kind of tension internally with employees, and there's been some, and this is the past and we're moving forward, whistleblower suits and things of that nature, and part of course, being a leader is obviously having the troops follow and buy into kind of your vision and the governor's vision for how we move forward. I'm just curious if you could just address kind of how you've interacted with the employees, and also talk about, and I know it's budget time and we're at kind of a critical point. I'm curious, what else do you need in terms of resources to make this agency better?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Worth, thank you for that question. With respect to employees, I think we have to start within the agency and to improve the quality of the work of our employees. In order to do that, we have to take care of our own. We have to take care of our own by providing employees with the appropriate support and the appropriate training and the appropriate opportunity to expand and grow in their roles, whatever it may be. And so we must first look internally in how we address our employees' concerns and make sure that we are investing within our own home, if you will, to ensure that employees have the best ability and supports necessary to do this difficult work. The agency is large, it's very complex, and we start examining that by implementing a workforce development plan, which is actually required under the Kevin S. settlement, and really start to invest at various stages in employee management to ensure that they have the best opportunity to grow and expand. With respect to what we need most, I can give you specific asks. We would like the benefit of having some investment into a qualitative assessment support, and it's a very modest amount. It's $50,000 in a special that we've put on the table this morning, and I hope in House Bill 2 as it came out this morning, as well as another $200,000 as an ongoing investment in the Office of the Secretary to help us monitor our Kevin S. commitments. We need additional support in our Tribal Relations Office so that we can hire more employees to work collaboratively and sensitively with our tribal partners, and that is a huge commitment that we have, but we need more investment there. And then, of course, keeping our employee positions stable and as they exist today. I know in some of the budgetary talks there was kind of a removal of some positions. We hope that that doesn't occur, but rather enables us to really hire more employees and have a more robust workforce. But I could go on for half an hour on our priorities, but from this morning, I would ask you to just look at those items first and foremost in House Bill 2. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Senator Worth, for the question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I appreciate that. I think it's, even though we're not the Finance Committee, I mean, those, seem like very reasonable asks, and I just think if part of the responsibility that we all have as a state for this agency and those that are most vulnerable is to make darn sure that A, we can get people like you willing to serve. So the governor has done that, but now I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure you have the resources to be able to succeed. So again, I just really appreciate, as Senator Ortiz-Pino said, to go from being the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, which you were, I think, during your term, and then to be willing to step up. Again, it's the ultimate kind of public service and commitment to that, and so we just appreciate it tremendously.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from the committee? Seeing none, what's the will of the committee?
I move to pass.
A move on a do pass. Any opposition? There's a second. And to call the vote.
Senator Duhigg?
Yes.
Senator Lopez?
Yes.
Senator Ortiz-Pino?
Yes.
Senator Stewart?
Yes.
Senator Worth?
Yes.
Senator Jaramillo?
Yes.
And Senator Avisoto?
Yes, ma'am.
On a vote to 7-0, congratulations. We'll be doing a full confirmation on the Senate floor.
And Mr. Chair, just so we will do this on the Senate floor.
Okay.
You are welcome.
Yes, I'll go.
There, if you would like to be. We are asking, given numbers, that not a whole bunch of family. But again, I very much appreciate you being here in person. I think that's something we appreciate. But you're welcome to be down today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. The next item on the agenda is Senate Memorial 1, Paid Family and Medical Leave Task Force. And so that's Senator Stewart and Senator Correa-Hemphill.
Really nicely.
Thank you, Senator Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before you have Senate Memorial 1, last year in this session, there was a bill in the House to set up a state-sponsored family and medical leave program. That bill did obviously not make it through the session. What we would like to do is continue that work in the interim. So this asks the Workforce Solutions Department to lead a task force on setting up a state family and medical leave program. Lately, there's now about 30 states that have put this into place. One of the most significant reasons to do it is that there's only about 4% of our businesses that can use the federal family and medical leave because they have fewer than 50 employees. So we have very few of our businesses that are able to use that federal family and medical leave just because of the size of our businesses. The health benefits are huge. You may want to look on page 4. These are the folks that we've asked to be on the task force. And this would, again, be run by the Workforce Solutions. And so that's essentially it, Mr. Chairman, a continuation of last year's work so that we can take better care of our families. Those states that have done this find that their businesses have fared better under our pandemic because of this help with the state family medical leave. So I'm happy to stand for questions. I do believe there are people online that want to speak.
Thank you so much, Senator Stewart. Before I go to those online, I'll ask that those who are here in support of the bill, online actually, raise your hand and we'll get your names written down. And before I go to you, is there anybody here in the committee room who would like to speak on behalf of this bill? In favor? Seeing none, I'll get a list from those who are on Zoom who want to speak in support of the bill. And we're getting those names now. We do have one in the room who would like to speak on the bill. If you'd like to come forward.
Hi. Hello, committee. My name is Mariana Anaya, and I stand here in support of the bill on behalf of the New Mexico Coalition of Sexual Assault Programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to go to those of you on Zoom, and I ask that you limit your comments to 1 minute 30 seconds, since I have a long list, and I'm going to start with Jean Hamrick. Ms. Hamrick, if you can unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear?
I can hear you.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I'm Jean Hamrick, a volunteer advocate with AARP New Mexico. Paid family and medical leave continues to be a top priority for us this year. According to a 2021 AARP study, the average out-of-pocket cost to family caregivers is over $7,000. That amount increases for family caregivers taking care of two others, such as a child and an aging parent, to over $10,500. Hispanics, on average, spend 47% of their income on caregiving activities. This is on top of lost wages. During COVID, many formerly working family caregivers have left the workforce. The task force will gather data from many groups representing business and workers to design a PFML program benefiting both employers and employees. Having a program will help stabilize New Mexico's workforce and ensure a stronger economy. One way will to be keep working family caregivers in the workforce and allow those that have dropped out to return. We strongly urge a do pass vote on Senate Memorial 1. Thank you.
Thank you. Allie Rushforth.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Ellie Rushforth. I'm the reproductive rights attorney at the ACLU of New Mexico. We stand in strong support of this legislation, not only as an organization, but I know personally the benefits of paid family medical leave in my own life, and the challenges of not having access to paid family medical leave. So for all those reasons and many more, we urge a due pass on this important memorial. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Tracy McDowell.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Tracy McDaniel. I'm a policy advocate with Southwest Women's Law Center. And in that role, I lead a coalition of lots of organizations, a diverse coalition focused on this issue. And this task force, we've gone out and talked with business groups, we've talked with the department casually, more or less, in the past, but this is really an opportunity for all of us to sit down and have real discussion and do some analysis that's needed to really ensure that we're all on the same page with a paid family and medical leave program and the Paid Family and Medical Leave Act, which we hope would be presented in 2023 in the legislative session. I really appreciate the attention to this matter, and I ask you to vote do pass on Paid Family and Medical Leave Task Force today. Thank you.
Alyssa Kenny Geyer.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I am Alyssa Kenny Geyer, a new resident of Santa Fe and a former Oregon State legislator from 2011 to 2021. I worked on our paid family leave, our paid sick leave, and our bereavement leave for years, and I'm strongly in support of this measure and also want to just offer my services to the task force, if this passes, to help in any way I can. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Jacob Behill.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Jacob Behill. I am with New Mexico Voices for Children. Thanks for the opportunity to speak today. Given New Mexico's rank near the bottom of the nation in child well-being, we believe it's imperative to enact policies that promote family and community health and economic stability, and that paid family medical leave is one of these policies. Among many other things, research has shown that access to paid parental leave is strongly associated with lower rates of mortality in infancy and childhood. And also it addresses disparities in wealth and wealth building that have been worsened by the pandemic, and if are improved would also make things better for kids. And so establishing a task force to give us concrete data on what implementing this policy would look like is a crucial step in hopefully putting our state in the ranks of all other industrialized countries and almost a dozen US states. And for that reason, we urge a due pass on this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you. Janet Williams. If you're there, Janet, you're on mute. Okay, I'm going to move on to Kathleen Mosley.
Hello?
Hello, Janet.
Hello?
I can hear you now,
I'm
Janet.
sorry. Okay. This is Janet Williams, president of Santa Fe Now, National Organization for Women, and we stand in strong support of the paid family leave. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Kathleen Mosley.
No.
Chairman Jaramillo and members of the committee, I am speaking on behalf of the New Mexico Public Health Association. I'm a registered nurse, retired nurse, and longtime community health nurse. This is one of our priorities for this session. And personally, as a new grandmother, helping my daughter and son-in-law welcome my granddaughter, she was able to breastfeed for 18 months, even during COVID. And I am convinced of the value of paid family medical leave to make this happen. I understand one of the big benefits of paid family medical leave is a corresponding increased duration in breastfeeding to help meet our public health goal of breastfeeding for 6 months and maybe even a year. So I would respectfully encourage you to pass this. I know there are concerns with some of the older leave programs, and this task force would help New Mexico build an optimal model for our paid family medical leave. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Erica Gallegos.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Erica Gallegos, Policy Director at OLE. We stand in favor of Senate Memorial 1 and view this as a racial justice issue. No one should have to choose between their job and caring for themselves, a new baby, or a family member, and yet that is the choice that workers face. And this disproportionately affects Black, Indigenous, and people of color. We urge committee members to vote in favor of Senate Memorial 1 so that a task force can study the cost and needs in order to ensure families do not need to make these difficult decisions in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Carolyn Massey. Ms. Massey, if you're there, you're on mute.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm sorry. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Caroline Massey, and I'm the Executive Director of the Southwest Women's Law Center. I am also a working mother residing here in Rio Rancho, New Mexico. I am also a Navajo tribal member. We've been working on this paid family medical leave for the past 3 years. Our next step is to create a task force to work with the Department of Work Solutions to study this issue for implementation. I don't want to reiterate all of the benefits of paid family medical leave that have been discussed already, but I want to emphasize that at some point, every New Mexican will need to take time away from work because of caregiving responsibilities or healthcare needs. This includes themselves or their family members. The creation of a paid family medical leave program will help working people to welcome a new child, to care for their family members with a serious health concern or manage their own serious medical condition. New Mexicans should not face the loss of their livelihood because they need to take time away from work due to such responsibilities. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I ask for your support for Senate Memorial 1.
Thank you. Thank Alan Pines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Ellen Pines representing the Disability Coalition. The disability community sees this as an important issue because people often need to take time off from work to deal with their own needs related to a disability or the needs of a family member. This memorial will move us in the direction of getting that paid leave program in place, and we urge the committee's support. Thank you.
Thank you. Miles Tokunau. Miles, if you're there.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Miles Tokunau, Deputy Director of OLE, and I'm here to give my full support for Senate Memorial 1. As a parent who became a parent during the pandemic, I know just how important paid family medical leave is, and I think that this pandemic has absolutely shown exactly why we need paid family medical leave for our communities. So thank you very much. I strongly urge you to give a due pass for Senate Memorial 1. Thank you.
Thank you. And lastly, Kat Sanchez.
Chair and committee members, my name is Kat Sanchez with Bold Futures, which is a statewide reproductive justice organization led by and for Black, Indigenous women and people of color. Not to be repetitive, and for all the reasons stated before, we want to voice our full support of Senate Memorial 1 and urge a due pass. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there anybody in the room who's in opposition who would like to speak? Seeing none, if there's anyone on Zoom who's in opposition, if you can raise your hand and I'll get that list brought to me. Seeing none in opposition, I'll next go to the committee for questions. Senator Lopez.
Mr. Chairman, I move a due pass.
Motion for due pass. Second by Senator Duhigg. If you can call the roll.
Senator Duhigg.
Yes.
Senator Lopez.
Yes.
Senator Ortiz-Pino.
Yes.
Senator Stewart.
Yes.
Senator Worth.
Yes.
And Senator Jaramillo.
Yes.
6-0.
6-0. You move on to your next committee. Thank you, Senator Stewart.
Thank you.
We'll now go on to Senate Memorial 6, the Study Unified Jail and Prison System, Senators Neville and Senator Ortiz y Pino.
Senator, he's in education, so when we're ready, I'll text him.
Okay.
So,
You sit in the middle. Huh?
okay, all right. It's the monkey in the middle. Oh, what does it say? What does it say? Arguments for.
Mr. Chairman, we've paid Senator Neville, and I think he'll be joining us before we get too far along. But this is a measure that was brought forward by the New Mexico Counties Association. It simply asks that we begin taking a look at what a couple of other states have done, and that is examine the ways that the prison and jail systems in their states correlate and articulate and try to figure out a way in which we might do that more effectively, possibly combining them, but not necessarily, but at least taking a look at that. And with me is Grace Phillips, an attorney with the Association of Counties, New Mexico Counties. And I'd like her to have a chance, Mr. Chairman, to explain why we brought this forward and why both Senator Neville and I think it would be a good idea.
Thank you so much. Grace, good to see you. I used to see you as a county commissioner, and it's good to see you again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. It's delightful to be here and to be here in person this morning. As Senator Ortiz y Pino said, I'm Grace Phillips, General Counsel for New Mexico Counties. And the ask today is for a study to look at, and I think you all know that New Mexico counties run the jails, right? And that's actually a relic of a statute that was passed in 1865. And it's not the only way to do things. We know that there are real challenges with the way we're structured. You know, you will be hopefully approving an inmate reimbursement fund this year, as you have for the last several years. We spend a lot of time and energy deciding which buckets of taxpayer money should go to pay for people when they're in different places. We have very, very serious, I think, difficulties in the fact that we don't have a unified inmate management system. We don't have a unified electronic health record. You know, I could go on and on with the challenges. And really, this, as Senator Ortiz y Pino said, is just the ask that we study with initially a very small task force, the courts, Department of Corrections, and counties. What are the pros and cons? Is there a better way? And what would be the pros and cons of taking a look at that? We do know that there are 6 states that have a unified system. We also know that West Virginia has a sort of a slightly different, not a state, but also a unified approach. And we think that the time is to at least take a look at this. And is there a way we could be doing things better in this state?
And with that, Mr. Chairman, we'll stand for questions.
Thank you. So before I go to questions of the committee, I'm going to see if there's anybody in the room who stands in support of this memorial. And we have one. If you can please come up to the microphone. And those on Zoom, if you can raise your hand if you're in support, and I'll get to you as soon as I get the list.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Ricky Lee Chavez, Legislative Coordinator for the New Mexico Criminal Defense Lawyers Association. We strongly in support of this memorial and urge you to do the same. We know that our clients and the criminal legal system works better, more efficiently if we have unified systems in place, and we think that our clients and the attorneys that represent them would benefit from the outcomes of a study like this, so we urge your support. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And next I'm going to go to those on Zoom who are in support, and I have one, and it's Alan Pines.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ellen Pines, representing the Disability Coalition. As I'm sure the members of the committee have heard on numerous occasions, our jails and prisons are essentially an extraordinarily large behavioral health system, although it's not a role that they were designed for or necessarily well suited to. The ability to meet those needs varies considerably among the various counties, and we believe that a study of an alternative approach would be a very worthwhile endeavor, and we urge your support of the memorial. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone in the room in opposition of Senate Memorial 6? Seeing none, if there's anybody on Zoom in opposition, if you can raise your hand, and I'll get to you. No opposition. Senator DeVille, would you like to add any comments to the memorial before I take questions?
Briefly, I don't want to delay the committee. In my past life, I was a city commissioner and a county commissioner, and one of the big battles we had every year when we're doing budget was jail costs and trying to come up with a better system. Ultimately, the taxpayer pays the bill no matter whether it's the city, the county, or the state. Ultimately, the taxpayer pays it. The most efficient system is what we need, and that's kind of what this seeks to strive for, to establish that system.
Thank you. Any questions from the committee? Senator Worth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I appreciate this, and I do think it makes sense. So basically, it's Grace. The Association of Counties is going to do the convening. So we're not asking a state agency to do it. So I assume that means the cost is something that the counties are willing, the association is willing to bear. Is that correct?
Yes, thank you, Senator Worth. And I should say that Artie Pepin did authorize me to say that the courts support this as well. And I can also tell you that we've been in communication with CJI, the Criminal Justice Institute, and they have committed to use their federal funding to support the task force. We didn't put it in the memorial because it wasn't really final, but what they've told me is that they are very interested in doing this work. And so, yes, we'll be the conveners, but we'll be doing it with the support of an outside agency to assist with the actual research and report preparation.
Great, and I appreciate that. And just one other question. So it's a task force of stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? Because I don't think that's necessarily, or I might have missed it. Is that spelled out in here, but who are you envisioning?
Thank you, Senator, Mr. Chair. This task force would be very small. It would be counties, corrections, and the courts. Just to really take the threshold, is this something worth pursuing, and what are the pros and cons? And if that gets a thumbs up, what I would foresee would be a much broader task force with potentially a multitude of stakeholders. But at this point, we wanted to keep it kind of narrow so that we're not assuming that we're going to go forward with it, but we're more taking a look at the building blocks and really trying to marshal the experience that different states have had doing things differently.
Well, I appreciate that, and I think our local detention jails have basically become de facto mental health facilities. Yep. And I've just over the years, I've been shocked to see some of the smaller counties, the percentage of the budget that's going towards this, and again, it's just huge. So I do think this is a worthwhile endeavor. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, Senator, even in my history, which is 20 years old now as a county commissioner, that was our biggest single line item in our budget a long time ago.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. I'm going to go to Senator Lopez, followed by Senator Duhigg.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, senators. This is like long overdue, right? I remember us having conversations here on how to reimburse counties, right, for the cost of transporting folks, even if you had persons down in New Mexico trying to get up to Vegas, right, for a mental health evaluation also. I mean, it's just all the intricacies that go in and what counties are having to incur, right, with regards to costs. So I'm hoping, Mr. Chairman, and look very forward that we can have some direction as to how to alleviate some of the costs, because ultimately we're all citizens of the state of New Mexico, and we need to figure out how to make it the best to serve and assist those who are incarcerated. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Duhigg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, senators, for bringing this. I think this is a great idea. I would love to see us both be able to improve those efficiencies and also improve the medical care that we are providing in these facilities to those inmates. I've seen a number of cases where they were not being provided the medical care that they needed, and that's an issue that I hope will be addressed with approaches like this. So thank you for bringing this, and I would move a do pass.
Thank you so much. And before I take a second to the vote, I just want to thank you also for bringing this. As a former county commissioner, I definitely know how big of a line item it is. And so I just want to thank you on behalf of Rio County for doing that. And so I have a motion for a do pass. And second by Senator Worth. If you can take the roll, please.
Senator Duhigg. Yes. Senator Lopez. Yes. Senator Ortiz-Pino.
Yes.
Senator Stewart.
Yes.
Senator Worth.
Yes.
And Senator Jaramillo.
Yes.
6-0.
6-0, you get a do pass. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The next item on our agenda is Senate Bill 176, Legal Staff Report for Better Health Outcomes by both Senator Hickey and Senator Ortiz-Pino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and this is a measure that we've taken various approaches in the past to trying to get established unsuccessfully, but this year we thought we would try this approach of a Senate bill with an actual appropriation. The issue is this, that we have an interim committee on Health and Human Services. It is one of the busiest of the interim committees. We had this past year 21 full days. These committee meetings usually start at 9 o'clock and last well after 5 in the afternoon. And the committee is charged with so many different responsibilities. It has oversight responsibility for the Human Services Department, which includes not just the public assistance programs, Medicaid, which is by itself an $8 billion budget item when you factor in the federal money, SNAP, the food stamp benefits, all the information issues that come up in connection with the Human Services Department and its interactions with the other departments of state government. But then CYFD, which as we heard just a little while ago, has over 2,000 employees themselves. The Health Department, which has 4,000 employees and is the largest department in state government. Aging and Long-Term Services, the new Early Childhood Education and Care Department. Veteran Services came before us this last year. We've had joint meetings with courts and corrections because the functions interact, and as Senator Duhigg just mentioned, a lot of what goes on in corrections has to do with health and behavioral health. And on and on and on. Higher education. We've had presentations from the University of New Mexico, the medical school, and then the Burrell College. We've had presentations dealing with local issues around how to best access or create resources for behavioral health and substance abuse treatment. It's an incredibly extensive responsibility that this committee has been charged with. And it does it with essentially 2 staff assigned by Legislative Council Services who scramble throughout the summer. When we try to have hearings around the state, it becomes increasingly complex because then they have to not just put together the panels for the presentations, but do a lot of work around the site and adequacy of the site and getting notices out and coordinating all of that. It's an enormous responsibility, and what we found this past several years is that a lot of things that we would like to have dealt with, we simply run out of time, or we deal with so superficially that it's almost like, just kind of passing them through. Thank you, sexual assault programs. We understand you. Thank you. Programs. And it just becomes a very kind of rapid fire exercise in exposure to issues without really an adequate aging and long-term services, the new early childhood education and care department. Veteran services came before us this last year. We've had joint meetings with courts and corrections because the functions interact into this issue.
Thank you, Senator Ortiz-Pino and Senator Jaramillo and members of the Rules Committee. This summer was an incredible education in terms of what's going on in the state, but it was very frustrating because there's so much that none of it was pre-screened in terms of what really is appropriate content for the time that's very valuable to be used. None of it was vetted with oversight. I mean, it was pretty much we just listened to it and then moved on. We did not have time to process what we heard and say, and have really deeper questions. The questions were held to 2-3 minute sessions, and then we'd move on, and then we had no time to digest and debate among ourselves as to what we ought to do. And without staff members, that's virtually impossible. And so I provide a handout for you, the rationale for this, much of which my colleague has presented to you, the process, how it would work, and the benefits. I should say, in terms of the process, a number of times it was brought up during our committee, we have no staff. We're overseeing more money in the state than is in the state budget when you add in Medicaid. And there's no one really assisting that. There's some oversight in LFC in terms of Ms. Escobel, who's looking at some portions of accountability, but there is so much more to look at there. At the end of our session, we ended up, the senator put together a very nice kind of very high level 7-page overview, but with a couple of some recommendations, no real financial recommendation. And I find it incongruous, being new here, that the LFC, without anyone with any health expertise sitting on there, and with 2 overstretched individuals, Ms. Escobel and Mr. Jorgensen, trying to do a thorough analysis and come up with a budget for health care. And we should be the ones in the committee doing this oversight with assistance. How is the money being targeted? What programs are working? And then for us to go back and make concrete suggestions to the LFC. And again, the timing on this is crazy because LFC is meeting during the summer. I went to some of the meetings that LFC had on finance, and they're nice. They're not deep. They're not thoughtful. And not that they don't want to be. I understand that. And they're not terribly, and I use this word only positively, critical. Really, what is working, what is not working. And so we asked at various times to get some staff. Mr. Abbey actually approached me in the hallway after one meeting and said, okay, I'll tell you what. I'll fund one position if you can get Mr. Bruciaga to fund the other. And so I met with both of them, and they came together to agree to put these positions forward as they are structured here. You might say $175,000 is a lot of money. On the other hand, some of you may know Kelly O'Donnell, who is an incredible analyst. That would about kind of cover where she's at. But on the other hand, that may not be able to get that type of individual, but certainly someone who's skilled in the area of healthcare, health policy, and health finance. And also, with some of this money, could contract out for some studies so we could actually begin to see, are we having an impact as we would like to have. So the other thing is that as we went through these hearings, and we're still going through it, I don't know that we've dissected our response to the pandemic. What have we done well? What haven't we done well? And what are we going to do next time? And that absolutely is critical for us, and it has to be one of the focuses of the committee going forward. So, and then there's one other thing that I've learned, again, being new. we don't look at other states very much. I mean, there are a lot of wheels that have been invented out there, and we're maybe either not using them or inventing our own square wheel. And we could really benefit by looking at other states and go in particular. So I'm going to finish with the New York Times yesterday, the weekend review. I am a avowed blue bagger. That's the cover that it comes in, one or two in my neighborhood that gets the New York Times. And there was a great article in there about a whole new approach being tried in Oregon to decriminalize virtually all drugs that we would consider methamphetamines, opioids, what have you, because the data is there and they've seen it, and it comes out in spades in Portugal. If you do that, you have many fewer people who are continuing to use. They're not going into the judicial system and suffering it and going in circles. They're actually, with a misdemeanor, getting to the treatment they need. There's less crime and so forth. That's another state. That's something we could benefit from. I did not hear that this summer from those. They're working so hard just to count their numbers, let alone do the analysis. So we are asking that this bill be approved. I would like to amend it that it's an emergency because we really need to get started in March or April to start to get our agenda together, to do the interim hearings, and be able to come up with a budget for LFC rather than the kind of bass-backwards other way around. So I'll finish with that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Before I go to questions from the committee, is there anybody in the committee room who is in support of Senate Bill 176? Seeing none, for those of you on Zoom, if you can raise your hand if you want to speak in support of Senate Bill 176. It looks like we might have a couple.